Hello, everyone. We're just getting started, so we'll give a couple minutes for everyone to join. And maybe as you're joining in the chat, just let us know where you're joining from. And we'd be curious too if you're working in a office or remote or hybrid work environment at this point in time. So if you just put in the chat where you're joining from and which of those environments you're working in, that would be helpful.
Yeah. If we are not shy. Some people are shy. And sometimes we don't know where to start. Hey guys, where are you from? Who are you? We'll be happy to know so we can communicate and align ourselves. I see some names that I know here. Hey, John Hassak, what are you doing here? I can see you. Of course, I can see Alex and Christian. Nina, you are hiding. I can see you. Nina Wagner, I can see you. You're hiding. Hey, Vesna. Okay, I'm catching them one by one, like fish, like catching a fish. Hey, Matthew, thank you for coming over here. Yay.
Everyone will get started very shortly. Just if you've just joined, we're asking folks to let us know in the chat where they're joining from and whether they're currently working in an office, remote, or hybrid environment. So I see we've got everyone joining from Vancouver all the way to Croatia so far. Someone joining from Denver.
Hey, there's a guy from New York.
New York, yeah.
Come over here. I'll create some lunch for you. Come on.
Well, Nanaimo.
Very close to Toronto.
I grew up in Nanaimo, New Brunswick. Beautiful. New Brunswick is one of the Maritimes in Canada. Opher recently moved to Canada from Israel. New Brunswick is one of the 4 maritime provinces in Canada. It's beautiful.
Good.
Absolutely beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah. Dallas, where my stomping grounds is from.
Yeah. San Francisco, Vancouver, Croatia. Yay.
A lot of remote individuals, fully remote.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we get started? Thank you everyone for joining today. It looks like we've got a really good turnout, which is wonderful. As you know, today we're going to be talking about the hyper-changing world, both in terms of the speed of change and also the hybrid work environment that we now find ourselves in. If you have questions, put them into the Q&A section of Zoom, and we'll answer them as we go. You don't have to save your questions till the end. We'd like to make it as interactive as possible. Just to give you a sense of who's participating today, I'm Josh Blair. I'm the CEO of Impro.AI. My background, I worked at TELUS Corporation for 25 years before we started up Impro. I have a background, first third of my career was on the technology side, middle third of my career was as the Chief Human Resources Officer of the organization. And then final third of that time as a group president leading many different commercial parts of the organization, and also do a bunch of board work and other work now, but Impro is my true love. I also want to introduce my co-host today, Opher Brayer, who's also a co-founder and the chief scientific officer of Impro.AI. Opher is known and has been named as one of the best business coaches in the world. In addition to that, what I find so amazing about Opher is I think he's probably the best, or at least one of the best methodologists in the world at seeing patterns and figuring out how to turn them into repeatable behaviors and habits that individuals and organizations as a whole can adopt. And He runs in some amazing circles, so we're very lucky to have him as our chief scientific officer. So, as I said, please ask your questions in the Q&A section of Zoom as we go. But just to get us started, Opher, the world has changed so much over the pandemic. The speed of business, the speed of decisions, the speed of employment situations, market situations changing is just incredible. And on top of that, we're seeing a lot of workplaces try to figure out, as we come out of the pandemic, what's the right solution? Is it bring everyone back in the office? Is it to let people stay remote, or some hybrid thereof? And before we get into any answers on any of those solutions, I'm just curious from your perspective, given all the different leaders that you interact with, the hundreds and hundreds of individuals you see coming through Impro and our services every day, what do you see as the challenges that leaders are facing now in this new world that we're in?
Looking at 50,000, more than 50,000 interactions with leaders, the main thing that we can see is the speed of change is basically creating less control on change. Like change is controlling how you will behave. So if you have, let's say, a virus that is coming to the world, you're not prepared for it, you don't know how to behave, suddenly you work from home, and then when you get rid of it, suddenly you have to go to the office. There's a lot of confusion that I can see. Some chaos, even in the markets, you can see a lot of chaos. And I think the challenge is how to manage confusion, because there are confused messages, of the media, and confused ideas, what works, what does work in startups and in the big corporates. And I think the hardest part that you don't know, okay, so much of what's going around you, and you're being controlled basically by the changes as they occurred. And we don't know who is making the impact even on those changes. I think this is the hardest part. And I think the highest the speed is, the number of changes in the market, the less control. And when you lose control, you can make more mistakes. It's like riding too fast on the bicycles.
Do you think it's the hardest time in history to be a business leader?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I think it's very hard. I mean, Josh, you have been a leader of a large organization, a huge one. And if you would think for the times that you've been managing it, like 10 years ago, you can go to a consulting firm and ask to write a strategy 5 years ahead. Now, who is writing a strategy 5 years ahead now? Yes, you can write it, but it probably will change, because strategy should be dynamic, because there are a lot of new competitors, a lot of new AI, a lot of SaaS companies, a lot of small companies that's coming up, plus the environment, plus invasion to the Ukraine. All these things are much faster than ever before, and the impact is always global. And I think that what's happening in the market, that they have global influences, okay, that create a lot of chaos, and it's hard to make decisions. And the harder thing is to make a decision in this world.
Well, let's start maybe something more micro, just this question that leaders are facing of, now we're coming out of the pandemic, do I bring my team in to work all in the office again? Or do I let people stay and work purely remote? Or do I do some hybrid thereof? What are your different, there's no right answer, obviously, but what are some of your perspectives on this topic?
There are pros and cons to both sides. If you are a developer and you want to sit quietly and develop, you don't want people to knock on your door every 2 minutes and ask questions, right? So you'd rather work from home or close the door. But if you close the door, why did you work from home? However, when you're in the marketing department and you want to brainstorm or strategy or something else, then on Zoom, it's very hard to brainstorm. Very hard to really have that impact of a whiteboard and talking and energy and fun and coffee and food while thinking. The human interaction is very strong in certain areas, while in certain areas it becomes an interference. Now, the mix is probably there, and it probably will stay, and we will have to make decisions when it is right to meet and when it is right, stay at home, work, don't commute for 2 hours because you can work for those 2 hours. And also to create better life-work balance because you can see the family during the day and help at home. But the main thing that I see today is how do you make the decision and how you enforce this kind of a model, which is hybrid, because this has no clarity at all. Where exactly and when exactly we should meet and be together, or where exactly we should separate. And I think this is a mix that is very hard to understand for those companies who've been working. Josh, you can answer it. We have been building this company when Maya and I were still in Israel, and the developers were in Israel, and some of them, and then some people were here, and then we built it. But then when we met the first time, when we came over here, being in the same room together for 3 days, we've been able to knock out strategies that we could not have been doing in 4 months of work on Zoom. And we've done it in 3 days. And I think this we also confused in some way because we are trying to figure out what is the best way for us, when to come to the office and when not. And I think that the method that should be prepared for this is the method of knowing when, where, and why it's going to be from home, on Zoom, in the office, and so on. And I think this is totally not clear yet. There are lots of bugs and errors. That's all.
I think that's well said, Opher. And Opher was referring to Maya Lieberman, who's our third co-founder. There's 3 co-founders at Impro, and Maya's our chief operating officer, and absolutely incredible person at getting anything and everything done for the benefit of our customers.
In the speed of light.
Yeah, exactly, at the speed of light. And Opher's right. Like, Impro is interesting because when we started the company, Opher and Maya were based in Israel, and of course I'm based in Vancouver, and we did it purely remotely for quite some time until they moved to Canada in June of last year. And we find whenever we do get together face to face, because we're still separated by some 3,000 kilometers, with myself being in Vancouver and Opher and Maya being in Toronto, when we do get the team together face to face, it's amazing the strides we make. In 3 days, as Opher said, it feels like we conquer what would take months on Zoom. So I think you're right, Opher. I think the answer is a blend of the two. It's interesting. One of the questions that's shown up in the Q&A says employees are switching to jobs where they can work remotely, so they don't want to give up working remotely. Do you think remote work was a driving factor of the Great Resignation, and how worried should leaders be about this?
I can add something into it. I remember when I met you the first time. When we met you, Maya and I, we met you the first time. The first thing we did, we gave a hug. Virtually, you cannot give a hug.
Yeah.
Like virtually, you will never see the back of the head of a person, so you don't really know it. This is a virtual world, and it has its own limitation. It's very practical sometimes because you don't have to commute. It's practical, but emotionally, it's something different. Because when I hugged you the first time, the relationship has changed immediately, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it must be a physical hug. It could be like being together in the same room and then go for lunch or have dinner. And this is the world of the business world is based on relationships, which is hard to maintain, emotionally on Zoom. And I think this is where companies can fail, because the networking part, the relationship part, creates a better engagement. So when you see people leaving companies with ease, it's because there's no connection, there's no emotional connection. I can talk to you on Zoom, I can do my work, and I can send you some files, I can send you some presentations, but there's no emotional connection. It's very low emotional connection. And that's why if I don't like you and I can find another job, I will go for another job because we're not connected. But if we go for lunch together and dinner together and be together in the office and argue and see when you have a stomach pain, and this is something different in relationship, okay? Because if not, then families could be virtual. Can you raise your children virtually? Can you maintain a relationship with husband and wife, virtually between partners? Because it's not normal, but because, oh, this is only work. Oh, therefore, since it's only work, I can go to another work because somebody is paying me another $500 per month or another $5,000 per year. But there's no connection. I mean, even leadership is not possible. And there's no leadership that can be done only through media. Look at governments, and you will understand.
Well, it's an interesting point too, because it's it kind of becomes circular in the sense that I agree with you. Like, if you don't have some sort of physical presence together, and it doesn't have to be all the time, it could just be some of the time, very hard to develop that emotional connection to your leader, to the company. And then on the flip side, coming out of the pandemic, there's people who love working remote so much that they'll switch companies. If a company says, hey, you just got to come back purely into the office, we want you in the office all the time. So it's kind of leading back to this idea of hybrid work being the right answer. And takes me back to what you said probably 10 minutes ago, but you have to have purpose if you're doing hybrid work, in the sense of, and whatever that purpose is, but defining, hey, we're all going to be in the office Tuesday to Thursday, or Tuesday and Thursday, or whatever is the right solution. And it's not, the right solution for all roles either. Like I remember at TELUS, we started the whole hybrid work move back in 2006, just because we thought it was the right thing to do. And we thought would it be appreciated by our team, from coast to coast to coast, across Canada and internationally through TELUS International. But what we learned is there's no one size fits all when it comes to hybrid work. Sure. So you really have to start with what is the role someone is performing, and what are the requirements of that role. And so, for example, if one of the requirements of that role is meeting with your customers every day, well, then the person's got to be physically somewhere where they can meet with your customers every day, if it's a face-to-face customer support role, by way of example. So we had to look at the role and kind of say, okay, what works for that role? And then after, it had to say, okay, now what works for the individual? So, for some roles, it was very flexible, whether someone could be in the office all the time, or, work from home full time. But if we just, from head office said, oh, that role should be remote, or that role should be hybrid, that didn't work for everybody, because there's some people who do truly want to be fully remote and only really want to come into the office maybe once a month to have a check-in. But there's other people who want to be in the office more often. They need that interaction. Maybe they're more of an extrovert and they really thrive on that in-person interaction. So, for me, it just underscores that we really, when we're implementing a hybrid work environment, you got to have a lot of thought, a lot of purpose about how you're doing it. Look at what your customers require, look at what the roles require, look at what individuals want also. And so it's not easy to do. Like, it's hard leadership work to implement a hybrid work environment.
Yeah. I want to say two things. We have a message here from John, and he says something really nice to summarize it. Tech helps to facilitate communication, but does not facilitate connection. Well said, John, beautifully. The Great Resignation is driven by lack of meaning being experienced at work. And it's not your 2 cents, it's much more than 2 cents. It's brilliant. And I can say that based on it and what you've said, Josh, sometimes in relationship between humanity, forget about work, okay? Work is work, relationship are relationship. You can mix relationship and work at a certain level, right? But if you build a relationship, just, across Zoom calls, that's not the relationship that humans usually have, okay? Kids, they go into the playground to play with other kids. Our work is a playground to play, and we need to play together in this game. And I know that there are a lot of kids today playing, on online games the gamers of the world, and they lack already some of the things that being called being together, play together, have to take a ball and play like soccer or I don't know, basketball. But I think that the basic element here in what we say, it's very hard. And I have seen hundreds of communications with leaders in organization, because that's what we do. For most of them, it's very hard when they're only online to motivate and to inspire, okay, to keep with the change. Because the change is fast. Now you need to motivate and inspire, because change is fast and it's frustrating. When people are frustrating, you know, they become basically it creates stress. The speed creates stress, basically, of some kind. Now, when somebody is stressed out, how do you motivate him? And how do you inspire him? And how you inspire and motivate in order to keep up with the change and lower the stress level as a leader? How would you do this? And sometimes maybe people can work from home, it's fine. But then they can say, hey, guys, you know, let's go for a beer on Thursday and meet together. At least that, like the minimum requirement of being human. Because this kind of thing, living in a matrix, okay, has its own benefits and a lot of problems that will arise out of it because of not having, personal communication in the office. Nevertheless, I can prove to you from my own work, being as a consultant for innovation from startup from Silicon Valley to Singapore for so many years, that what you can do in a room in the creative thoughts and the creative thinking, you cannot do even in 2 months of systematic work with templates and everything is well organized, but the spirit is not there. It's very hard to create that spirit. And I think that if you find a way to mix between them, then you might be able to create a method that will be good for your organization, because for every organization and every team and every person in every country, there's a different method. And now that you have global teams, okay, and you have people from India working for people from Sweden, working with people from South America, working with people from North America, there's a culture issue here, okay? Those culture issues can be solved if we meet, but how are we going to meet if we have different countries? So these are what we face, and we need to think deeply for every organization to have its own unique solutions based on some concepts of the meaning behind human relationship.
Yeah, and part of what I hear you saying is, even if your team members want to be purely remote, as the leader, if you want to have strong connections with your people, you still got to find a way to get together with them. And to your point, whether that's bringing people into the office once or twice a week, or at least having a get together where you go for a drink one evening each week, or if you've got people in different locations as a leader, you need to get on that plane now and then and go see and be with your people, because having that physical human connection makes everything else go so effective, in the sense of, you're even going to be able to achieve more over video conferencing as long as you have that stronger human connection that you've developed in person at different points in time.
Yeah, I agree. It feels to me sometimes that in order to create this clarity about what should be in an organization, whether about the hybrid world, is that one of the things that you have to be to know how to do well is how to, on one side, how to embrace the new technologies that are coming up and helping you to work while you're remote, and to embrace all of them, try all of them to see what works better for you. But at the same time, you have to work on helping people to have a growth mindset in order to be able to adapt quickly to technologies, methodologies, behaviors. There's so much change that we have to go through that it's very hard. I mean, for the human brain, it's very hard to make changes fast, right? Now, every day there's a new technology comes up that can help you. And then every day there's a, so if you don't have this growth mindset and you're not a strongly adaptable person, so you can be productive with tools and skills. You can be highly creative if you meet in person and use some tools. But but if you cannot be adaptable, then it will become harder for you to adapt those new skills. Okay, and sometimes we have seen people that we worked with that have changed 300 habits per year. This is abnormal. Most of them will change 100, 130, but most human, it's hard for them to change even 3 habits per year, right? So when you go through this kind of micro habits, and so many of them, it's because it's a need in the market, because everything is changing fast and you have to be adaptable to those micro changes all the time. And for us to keep up with the change, we as leaders need to know how to manage, how to mentor, how to motivate, how to inspire, and how to manage the speed of change. And when we go to the world of hybrid world, there are a lot of micro changes, hundreds of them. And this will require different approach to management and to leadership, to understand the pain that people go through. How can I change fast enough, hundreds of habits per year, in order to adapt to the market and be a part of this, beautiful organization of whatever you are building, and the mission that you have in hand. I think this is the hardest part, as I see it. The adaptability part is quite hard. And when you don't adapt to the new changes, then you don't have clarity, because you're back behind when everybody else is already in the new hypes and models and trends and whatever. Okay, and of course new technologies and new supporting technologies for the organizations.
Hey, you said so much there. I'd love to unpack it a little bit. At the start, you're talking a lot about, and I've seen some comments in the chat section about this, how as a leader, you have to have a strong connection with your individuals. And we've talked a little bit about how physical presence some of the time will enable that and a stronger emotional connection with your people. But you also went into, you got to understand what makes them tick, what they're looking for, what does meaning mean for them? Everyone's looking for meaning in their work, but meaning means different things to different individuals. And I remember, many years ago, one of the leading gurus on recognition and people feeling connection at work was a fellow named Chester Elton. And he did a bunch of research on what's the difference between a leader being a good leader and a great leader. And he would often ask the audience, what do you think the number one difference is in all my research between a good leader and a great leader? And people would say things like, oh, they're a visionary, or they're great at strategy, or they're a brilliant communicator, or they're phenomenal at execution. And he would always say, these are all excellent answers, but none of them are the number one answer. And the number one answer that his research showed was actually caring. And not in the sense of, hey, I'm going to give you a hug every day I see you, but caring to get to know each individual as an individual and understand what makes that individual tick. And then caring also in the sense of helping that individual to be the best performer they can. And sometimes that does require a hug, and understanding the challenges someone is going through and being empathetic and helping them. Other times it's the opposite. Someone's just for whatever reason in a bit of a rut and needs a bit of kick in the behind to get going and to be reminded that they are a higher performer than they currently are. And so I think to your point, as leaders, no matter what world we're in, but especially in this more complicated hybrid world, we have to take an accountability to get to know our people individually, not just as a face on Hollywood Squares over Zoom or whatever, but get to know that person as an individual and what's going to make them tick and how we can best support them. So that emotional connection is so important. Yeah. Another thing I want to hit on, though, and ask you a question on is you talked about how there's so much change in the world today. And so as individuals, it's a struggle to adapt to all that change. And you talked about, people forming new habits through micro changes. I'd love it if you'd share a bit more about that. When I was the chief HR officer at TELUS, that was one of my biggest frustrations is, you would run some sort of program and people would get all excited and they'd have 12 changes they wanted to implement when they got back to the office. But then they'd hit a wave of emails and meetings and customer demands and everything. And they'd really struggle to make those changes or to form new habits. What are your thoughts? How does someone actually go about forming new habits?
New habits. I will answer in a second. I just want to add something. What I've seen a message from John, I think, yeah. And there is a question there about to understand the needs, the values, and the goals and strength of people. And I totally agree. But here is the problem. You see, most people have values of some kind that usually they keep for a long time. Values can be kept for years. It comes from your mother and father and the country you come from, and so on and so on. Values, most people don't want to change. Sometimes they do change, but mostly. The problem is that you have to keep the same values, but the needs are changing and the goals are changing all the time. And you have to navigate with the same values through those changes, because needs can change every year, every month. Depends what's happening in the market, right? So now the needs can change, the goals can change. It means like we ask you to do something different, or you need to do something different. And then the second thing that you wrote was about feeling safe and secure. What if I will tell you that it's not possible? In a hyper-changing world, there's no way. And what I've learned in my life, and I can live in total chaos easily, and to create order within the chaos, is working with so many, like hundreds of leaders. I understood that if you learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable, you can solve the issue. And I will say it again, how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think this is the main element, because people search for security all the time. Yes, in Maslow, you can see it in the hierarchy of needs, people search for security. But what if it does not exist? How will you survive in a world that security does not exist and you cannot feel safe anymore? Do you want to survive or not? If you want to survive, you have to accept the idea that you cannot be secured, and because it will change every month or every year, and you can feel safe anymore. There's one virus, there will be another virus. Then there's one war, there will be another war. How do you survive in these chaotic situations is more important. So my main message to many people, what's so bad being uncomfortable? What's so bad about being insecure a little bit, okay? But to have the mental toughness, right? To survive in this kind of environments. And I think that this is something we might be able to understand, that within the following years, I don't know what will happen in 10 years because the world is changing too fast, but is to make sure that we will not be stressed by living in an unstructured or unsecured world, but feel good enough to live in this uncomfortability of this world today. And what I know that we do in Impro for sure with our leaders, how we work with them, we make micro changes all the time because there's a need for micro changes all the time. I mean, you see that a person, okay, who is a VP had to change 300 habits, and probably will need another 100 or 200 next year. It means that you cannot keep the same habits in a changing world, because the world is changing. There's need for new habits. So the way we do it is on a micro level. We talk to them every day. We go to every event, in the calendar and see, how did you manage it before? Why it does not work, and how it will work better tomorrow. And then we guide them on how it will work. And then maybe after 1 month, we'll have to change that habit again, because the world has changed, the market has changed, there's new competition, and there's a new war, and there's a new virus. Now, if we can accept that to be comfortable being uncomfortable, it means that with the same values that you have, if you will be able to be so adaptable to changes, you will be able to survive as a leader, as a CEO, as a look at guys in development. Languages are changing, needs are changing, new features must be created. How are you going to do all of this stuff? The same is in methodology. I can create a methodology to work this year. I'm not sure that my methodology will work next year. So that's why we have an R&D of methodology, R&D of technology, right? Because we have to look at the data, we have to look at the analytics and say there are new changes in the market, and let's help people to change over time again and again. And change is not one time. Change is endless. You're not the same person when you're 5 years old and 8 years old. You're not the same person when you're 8 years old or 18 years old. You're not the same person ever. If you accept it and you know that you can make those changes, then you understand that there's no one rule. You cannot go to take a course, in some kind of executive MBA and say, yeah, I know everything. No, because until you finish the course, the things have already changed.
That's okay.
So the implementation is daily and endless. And you keep your core values, but you cannot keep the same strength because you need new strength. And a strength of today is the weakness of tomorrow. We can see it in every company, in every person, in every leader, in every person within the team. Your strength of today is your weakness of tomorrow. If you cannot turn your weakness into a new change it fast into new strength, you cannot survive. And this is something that is being done daily, every day. And when you look at the education system that are stuck in the 1960s, you see why we don't have enough developers in the world, why we don't have enough smart people in the world, why we don't have enough brilliant people and talents. And that's why there's a war on talent, because there's not enough talent in the world, because the education system, which is back in the 60s when there was no internet probably at those times, did not understand what is happening today in the world, in automation and AI, everything else. So instead of being worried about it, we have built this kind of system that can help endlessly to look at what's happening inside the organization, outside the organization, and make those micro changes every day and endlessly. So maybe you will change only 100 habits this year, and another 200 next year, and another 50 on the fourth year, and then another 500 on the fifth year. Being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I think this is my main message in order to enable a little bit of clarity.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great messages in there, right? So as an individual, whether you're a leader or a professional contributor, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Also, and there's a famous quote, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it basically says, learn to enjoy the journey as opposed to being totally focused on the destination. The journey is the reward versus the destination being the reward. And then accepting that constant change isn't just an external factor. You need to constantly change yourself and constantly form those new habits and those new skills. And as you're saying, I see the work you and all of our coaching / mentoring team do at Impro, and it's credible that the changes people are able to realize. Literally it can be hundreds of changes in a year. So it's pretty neat from that. I saw also that you're talking about John's comments as he was talking. He was saying couldn't agree more. And the concept of safety is still important in the sense if now you're in the leader's shoes, because people need to change so often, need to find ways to form new habits and new performance, you got to make sure that person feels safe in their relationship with you as their leader. So, that's probably the right lens to apply safety on. And when you as a leader say, hey, I know you don't have all the answers, so don't pretend you have all the answers. And you might have something that's a weakness today, but I believe you can turn it into a strength tomorrow with the right focus and the right support or the right micro coach, whatever it is to get you there. I think that's a super important thing for a leader to take away, because a leader could take away, well, yeah, my people just got to be better with change, and they got to be better at being comfortable with being uncomfortable. But also as a leader, you have the accountability to make sure that people feel safe and supported and that you believe they will go through the right steps to make those changes and perform better into the future. So I think there's some great lessons in all of that for individuals and for leaders that are so important. It was interesting, and then I want to jump back to some of the Q&A here because we've got some good Q&A coming in. But just a side story to me that talks about the importance of leadership and trusting your people that work for you and learning from them. And I remember when we started implementing hybrid work at TELUS, we try a bunch of different things, and in a lot of trial, you always learn a lot through trial and error and through pilots and everything. But we learned more by sitting down and just talking with our individuals who were working remotely or working hybrid than we could have if we just thought we had all the answers ourselves. And I remember one answer that was so classic. I remember an individual sharing with me, when you're someone who's working remote with a team that where some of the people are in the office most of the time, it's so important that the leader can flex between the different work styles. And the example they gave is, I have a one-on-one with my leader every Thursday at 2 p.m. And in the old world, when I was in the office, if the leader came by my desk at 1:30 and said, hey, I've got a deadline I got to hit, can we move our 2 p.m. meeting to Monday? I was like, sure, no problem, because I knew if I needed to access her as my leader, I could just grab her on Friday if I needed her before Monday. But now in this remote world, because that's my one meeting where I'm going to have one-on-one time with my leader every week, if she calls me up or sends me a text at 1:30 and says, hey, I can't make the 2:00 meeting, can we push it off to Monday? That's actually emotionally quite crushing for me, because I've been looking forward to that hour with my leader on Thursday at 2 the whole week. And to all of a sudden at the last minute have it moved, which would be normal in a physical workplace to do, but to have that happen in a remote world, is quite emotionally disturbing, emotionally crushing to me. And so, I think just added importance for a leader to know your people really well, but also to understand what works for them in these different whatever worlds you've got deployed. And some companies have them all deployed. Some companies have remote workers, hybrid workers, and in-office workers. That was the model at TELUS by way of example. So you really have to be able to flex as a leader better than you've ever flexed before. Which, to your point, maybe, not only is it important for individual contributors to be forming all these new habits all the time, every day, but as a leader, we got to challenge ourselves to develop new strengths, new ways of flexing our leadership style, new habits as leaders. We gotta be willing to change ourselves every day too.
Willing is one thing, knowing how is another thing.
Good point.
So my belief that what we see in the world today, there are a lot of new opportunities, even like for employees or for companies or for products or different niches. There are a lot of opportunities. Okay, a lot of, and there are a lot of threats at the same time, because the opportunities are open to everyone. So there's a lot of competition. And I think the opportunities and the threats, like in a SWOT analysis, right, shape the change of strengths and weaknesses. A new threat can create new strength or weakness. And the opportunity must create a new strength and elimination of the current weakness. It's in every person, it's in a team, it's in the organization itself. And that's why change is something that you have to work every day, and you must be comfortable with change. And change means no security, because usually they say, if you know how to do something, don't change how you do it. Beautiful, but nobody needs it anymore. Okay, so
that's a great point.
This is it. Yeah, that's a great conversation. And I think we should continue this conversation, but never mind.
I would too. But there's a couple interesting questions I think we should get to. One, and I don't know that we have the answers to this one, but it's an interesting question. Is a metaverse, or the metaverse, but there's going to be many metaverses. So is a metaverse a good solution for a workplace? It's fully remote, but there's much more human interaction than over Zoom. So interesting question. I mean, my initial reaction would be, yeah, it's going to be a big part of our lives, the metaverse. And it's interesting at TELUS International, we're using the metaverse to do recruitment. And it's really helping make for a much richer recruitment experience than just a pure video conference or Zoom experience would be. But offer some of your initial thoughts on, does a metaverse give us another angle that's perhaps better, worse, or just different?
Can you smell a person in the metaverse?
Nope.
So you are missing one element, using one of your senses, okay, to know the person. The metaverse is just an upgrade of what we call the matrix. So it creates a better matrix, but it's unrealistic still, because it's not really the ability to see yourself kind of sitting in the same room, because it's kind of sitting in the same room. You're not sitting in the same room. And you cannot say, hey, where did you get this coffee? Because he got it from, and I cannot get the same coffee. I just can't. I can have my own coffee. And I cannot smell the coffee that you brought to the table. And I cannot say to you, hey, where did you get this coffee? And this guy will say, give me a second. I'll go downstairs and bring one for you. Guys, does anyone want some coffee here? Because I'm going to bring some to all of us. And by the way, I baked amazing croissants today. Anyone who wants, really, on the metaverse? It's still non-humanistic. It will give opportunities. It will give kind of the feeling of the realistic life, but it's not realistic in the end. Yes, it probably will give you more opportunities and more technology will be developed around it, and you'll have a whiteboard and you'll have to walk around, and all this kind of thing will be much better than a whiteboard on Zoom, right? I'm sure about that. So technology-wise, yes. But the relationship, the connection, the emotional touch, you won't be able. Would you be able to shake hands? Not really.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
So if we want people to become, some kind of description in the virtual world, it's fine. Okay, that's okay. But I cannot bring you coffee, and we cannot have the same croissant, and the same croissant eating together in the same room can inspire business ideas. Why? Because a good taste and a good environment creates different kind of approach to solutions, to problems, to decision making. Because there's the warmth that even in the metaverse you will never be able to get. So
yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, go on.
No, I'm with you, and I think I would sum it up as the metaverse is an excellent technology upgrade from the remote working tools we have now, and so, by way of example, if you've got hundreds or thousands of team members all around the world and you can't afford to bring them all together at once, then yes, the metaverse is an excellent technique to deploy to have them feel more connectivity. However, as the leader, you still have that accountability to have some physical in-person time with your team, and to build those bonds and to get to know each person as an individual, and have them, kind of going back to the point we made earlier, know that you care about them as an individual and their growth as an individual. So,
Josh, it's like saying, okay, the world of events, big events, will disappear from the world. I have a friend. He's doing big events. His name is Tony Robbins. He's a good friend.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins have events like with 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 people. And he's a genius, because suddenly when the virus came in, he did it with hundreds of thousands of people online. But in the end, when the virus ended, he went back to do it in the physical manner, even though he can put 600 people online or 600,000 people online. It's not like 3,000 people having breaks, meeting each other, talk, hug, have beer together. You will never get it on this kind of virtual. I don't know, maybe one day you can simulate everything, even touch and smell and everything else. Maybe. But what I'm saying, do you think that humanity will say, let's not meet anymore, let's sit with those eyeglasses on you, or being on a screen all our life? I find it hard to believe that humanity will go this way. It might be useful in some areas and totally dysfunctional on other areas.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I think as leaders, we have to see technology as an enabler as opposed to technology being the answer.
Yeah.
And just maybe jumping off that, because we've got a couple questions around that, talking about development of talent. And given we're now in the remote world, in some cases, the hybrid world, in some cases, the metaverse is coming. How important does it come to use technology, and let's say not as the answer to the last point, but technology as an enabler for the development of individuals, especially now that, 5 years ago, all we talked about is the millennials in the workforce. But now we've got the millennials and we've got Generation Z or Z, depending on what side of the border you're on in the workforce. And so, you've got two, new generations or newer generations in the workforce that frankly demand the use of technology. What do you think about the importance of technology being an enabler of development?
I'm a strong believer in technology, as you know me, because this is what we're doing in our company, delivering methodologies into technologies and enable people to have 24 hours per day coaching at every time of the day, every second that they want, instead of, but on the same time, I mean, AI can do amazing things. And technology automation can do amazing things in managing system structures, and frameworks can really help, to be more precise and waste less time and so on. But in the end, what you find in the war of talent, that there are not enough talented people. And one of the reasons that some of them have not developed their talents or developed a method to develop their talents, the changing talent. Okay. And I think the other thing that you have in developing talent is how to make the best use of AI technologies and automation. And as a person who works for a company, and you do what you do as a salesperson all the time, and suddenly they bring you some software to manage your clients, okay, like Salesforce or something, and you have to invest time to learn. Do you learn really how to use Salesforce correctly? No, you learn just 10% of it, and just try to improvise. And sometimes technology can become a burden because you don't really deeply understand, and sometimes because it takes more time to learn the technology. It's not the use of the technology itself. You can have a couple of buttons, but how do you make a good use of it, and how you communicate between different technologies? And it's like to have a big control system with 1,000 apps and technologies that you can manage and click and see all of them systemically and the relationship between them, because there are a lot of good technologies out there, amazing ones. I've screened couple of thousands of technologies in the past 3 to 5 years, I would say. Mainly now I'm searching every technology on earth. I'm looking, how does it work? And I can see, like, if we go to the metaverse, so imagine like you have a huge dashboard with 6,000 apps, okay, that are being organized in a manner. You could say, like, like when you have a pilot, a commercial pilot, and he has a lot of buttons, and a lot of the dashboard is huge. So I see technology as an enabler for higher productivity, as long as you have the talent. Also, the talent of using all these technologies and the relationship between them and understand them. So imagine there is a person on the virtual world, okay, having a huge dashboard and say click, 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 and he fly fast, like 700 miles per hour, because this is where the world is, flying 700 miles per hour. And the technology is a great enabler, but you have to have the talent to use technology, besides of talent as a salesperson or everything else. And I see people in the technology world, when they know how to use it smart and move from one to another and understand the relationship between them, that they can be highly more productive, close more sales, develop faster, and so on and so on and so on. And so this is the way I see it. So there's the talent that you have, the inner talent that you have to have as a human, as a professional, and the talent to use all those technologies and learn them as fast as possible, and how to utilize them, in the best way, because there are many of them and they're so good, most of them.
Yeah, so it's ultra important to embrace technology, offer technology to your team, help your team develop through technology, and to keep the human element in it all along the way is, I think, something we've covered off. Well, amazingly, we're reaching the end already. It feels like it's been 10 minutes, but it's already been an hour. So probably a good time to wrap so that people can go to have a quick break before their next meeting. But hopefully some good takeaways here in terms of get comfortable with being uncomfortable, realize that you're going to have to constantly change. Even if you've got some great strengths, they might not be the right strengths for tomorrow. So you're going to have to constantly develop as an individual and develop new habits. Same thing as a leader. You're going to have to constantly develop and change as a leader. But as a leader in a hybrid and remote world, you still have to develop that personal connection and get in front of your people in person and show them that you care about them as individuals, and then leverage technology to help develop your team, but make sure there's good humanity to it too. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And we'll make sure that you get a survey, because we'd love feedback on how to fine tune these and make them even better in the future. Opher any final words before we close off?
I would love to see, let's say, all the people that have been attending this webinar to talk to us, to tell us more, to ask more questions, so we can create the next webinar more to the needs that people are looking for. And if we missed a couple of things or any other things that people want to talk, to become our friends, maybe even meet for coffee. I don't know. Depends on you guys. I mean, I will always be happy. Yeah.
Well, there you have it, an open invitation to help us shape our future webinars. So thank you everyone so much for joining. Hope you have a great rest of the week, and hope you had at least a couple takeaways that will help you moving forward.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. It was
Thank you everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye.